emergency. This is a report from the city clerk. Members, do you have any questions of staff on this item? If so, please raise your hand or unmute your mic to let me know. Are there any speakers on this item? If you wish to speak, please raise your hand or unmute your mic to let me know. Following no comments, can the clerk please display the staff recommendation on the screen? Recommendation. The city clerk recommends that the Board of Directors of TO Live 1 amend bylaw 1-2016 and adopt the draft bill in attachment 1 to provide that during an emergency declared to exist in all or part of the city under section 4 of 7.0.1 of the Emergency Management Civil Protection Act. A member of the board or its committees may participate in a meeting by electronic means and will be counted in determining whether or not a quorum of members is present at any point in time. And B, a member of the board or its committees may participate electronically in a meeting that is closed to the public. Summary. The purpose of this report is to recommend amendments to the procedures bylaw of the Board of Directors of TL Live to allow electronic participation by members of the board in meetings held. Guys, could you go on mute when you're not speaking because it flashes up and blocks what I'm reading? Thanks. So that disappeared from my screen. Let me then proceed and say, any discussion on this? All those in favor, please raise your hand. Contrary minded? Okay, Charles, did you want to say anything about that? You're on mute, Charles.
Yeah, I'm not sure if you're able to see me. I'm using the phone to connect, so I did raise my hand to support.
Oh, that was to support. Okay, sorry. I guess it was a delayed raise because of the phone.
No worry.
Okay, thank you, Charles. All right, motion carried. Our next, I better be careful on delays. Our next item is CT 10.2, President and Chief Executive Officer, TO Live, General Status Update, COVID-19. This was, right? Sorry, wrong page. Okay, I will ask the President, CEO, and other TO Live staff to give updates on this item. I will once again remind staff to only turn on their camera and unmute their microphone while speaking. Board members, please wait until all staff have presented, and then you will have the opportunity to ask questions or speak to staff. Then I turn this over to Clyde. Clyde?
Thank you. I'd like to welcome the board and the public that are tuning in today to the board meeting that we're having. Thank you very much for joining us today in our digital board meeting. Before I start, I'd like to recognize a few people, in particular the board chair and the chair of each of the committees. Our chair, Robert Foster, vice chair, Councillor Gary Crawford, Paul Bernards, Kevin Garland, Gabe McCann, and Kathleen Sharp. In our interim period where we were not able to have committee meetings, these people have really stepped up and worked with the staff, and we really value their input and advice and to getting us to here. I'd also very much like to thank the city staff, particularly the clerk's office and the city legal office, who have been instrumental over the last few months. You have before you a detailed board report, which is a public item, so I'm going to assume that you have read it all, although each department will give you an update. What we are doing, and as you can see, according to the report, we are really focused on the future throughout this period. Projects like the St. Lawrence Centre Next project and the Digital Transformation Project are those things which will lead us into the future and give us hope. We will also lay before you today a 3-phase of recovery in our program as well, I'd like to recognize the staff who are both on leave now. Many of us at TO Live are actually on leave and have been for several weeks now. And also those staff that are working and have come into the buildings every single day to make sure that our operations have continued. Those people have been dedicating themselves to the company, and I really want to thank them for their help. So without further ado, I'd like to turn our attention to the departmental updates. And the first person I'd like to call upon is Josephine Ridge. And in particular, I'd like to welcome Josephine Ridge. She joined us after the last board meeting, so this is actually her very first board meeting with us. She joined us direct from Australia, landed, went completely into quarantine, and actually now is giving her first update to the board, so be kind. Josephine.
Just before Josephine speaks, Josephine, I'd like to formally welcome you on behalf of the board to TO Live. Julia and I have known you for some time, and you have been a great contributor to the cultural life in Toronto. And I know that the board members share my view that we are thrilled to have you as part of the leadership team at TO Live, and thank you for joining us. I'm sure you're going to make a significant contribution just as we go through this very difficult period. And eventually, of course, we'll come out of it. And we look forward to your leadership and your contribution to TO Live, and more importantly, to the City of Toronto. So over to you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair, for those kind words, and my greetings to the board, and thank you to Clyde. Since the closure of TO Live's 3 venues, all the rentals and corporate events and TO Live presents programming and education engagement activities, they've all been cancelled. Our team has been liaising with all the affected organisations to facilitate that process, but also wherever possible to arrange the postponement and the rescheduling. Importantly, alongside that work, we've been planning for recovery and how TO Live is going to welcome artists and audiences back into our venues. We conceive this as a 3-phase process. The first phase focuses on the provision of space for artists and supporting the creation of new work. The second phase focuses on reopening our venues to audiences safely and reintroducing them to live performance in innovative ways as it becomes possible to gather in large groups. In phase 3, as we understand our new post-crisis society, we are planning for an appropriate and gradual return to full activity. However, we are far from that moment now, and our immediate concern is with phase 1 of the recovery process. This first stage of phase 1 began immediately with online programming to maintain public engagement and to assist artists affected by the pandemic. We are now fast approaching the next step in phase 1. For this stage, our focus is on the provision of space for artists. During this crisis, the call to support the arts as a force for healing and economic recovery has been pervasive. Never before has this message felt so meaningful, nor the livelihood and practice of so many artists been so threatened. So in phase 1 of our recovery process, we want to open our spaces to artists so they can get back to their creative development. Space is their engine room, without which there will be no new shows. We've also identified projects that TO Live can commission. We have ideas and projects ready to go, and for the arts community, action is critical to survival. Thank you.
Thank you, Josephine. Thank you for that great update, and thank you for all of your work and jumping in at the out of a rocket ship. Next, we'll turn actually to Gabe McCann, the chair of our Digital Transformation Committee, for a quick update on the digital transformation process.
Hey everybody, good to see you all virtually here. Thumbs up if you can hear me. Yeah, okay, awesome. This is, I think, one of the most exciting things that we're doing right now. We've been having, you know, a meeting or two during COVID to keep the ball rolling. And I think we're getting very, very close to, you know, awarding a solution to our digital needs. This is going to include a whole bunch of technology and some great things to bring us into the 21st century. You know, a huge thank you to Clyde and Jeff and Michael for their leadership on this. They're really steaming along. I mean, everybody here knows who's on the types of people that are on this committee, and you know, anytime they present something, you've got the top, you know, digital experts in the city and maybe in the country giving them the thumbs up. So you know, it's just been very, very exciting to see. I think this is going to bring a lot of change to how the internal processes work at live and making everything more streamlined and digital and affect the customer experience as well. So just wanted to assure everybody this is going very, very well. Clyde has put an amazing team together that is passing the test of, you know, the CIO of Cineplex, the chief digital officer of Maple Leaf Sports. So very, very exciting things ahead. And with that, we'll say goodbye. Back to you, Clyde.
Thank you, Gabe. Next, I'll turn it over to our VP of Marketing, Jeff Rohr, who also joined us recently, but did live through one board meeting already. So over to you, Jeff.
Thank you, Clyde, and thank you to Gabe for your leadership and passion in leading the Digital Transformation Committee. That was in full display during your report. I'd like to also thank and acknowledge the work of the entire marketing department, which during this tumultuous time. Our focus in marketing has been twofold: continuously communicating with our customers and keeping the TO Live brand top of mind. The box office has been working tirelessly to communicate with our customers. 80,000 ticket holders have been affected by postponements, rescheduling, and cancellations of shows due to COVID-19. Our Living Room series has well over 10,000 views on YouTube. This is the first time that TO Live has executed an entirely digital series. We are excited by the results and to be building an audience on a new platform. On April 24th, TO Live hosted our first ever live stream on Facebook of the Montreal musician So Called. There were over 10,000 views across all partner channels, including TO Live, Urgent Toronto, Ashkenaz Foundation, and Maclean's. Again, this is entirely digital programming and something that is a net new endeavor for the organization. Lastly, and picking up on Josephine's presentation on the phase 2 approach, this idea of welcoming is really critical to the organization. Creating a welcoming environment and communicating that welcome message to our customers. This is critical to bringing audiences back. And this will be the focus of our marketing efforts going forward. Thank you, and I'd like to pass things back to Clyde.
Thank you, Jeff, and thank you to your entire team, who I know have been working very, very hard during this period, along with everybody else. Over to another tireless group of people, Bill Milne, our VP of Finance, for an update. Thank you.
Clyde?
Yes, sir?
Would you mind? I'd like to make a comment, and that is to thank both Jeff and Josephine. I just had a long conversation with some of the senior members of the Board of Business for the Arts. And one message that came out very clearly is how important it is for organizations to continue to have a relationship with their clientele or their customers. Because if you drift away from them for a long time, how do you get them back? And I think you people are doing an excellent job at constantly reaching out and staying in touch through the Living Room series and the other things you're doing. So congratulations on that. The other thing that was discussed with regard to that was we are going to be living digitally with the arts for some substantial time. And there's a need, we believe, to start to allow digital shows to be sponsored. And we're hopeful that the corporate world will step up and start to sponsor these things. And so I throw that challenge out to you as something to explore. Business for the Arts is certainly going to start working on that and looking at it and see if we can recognize that artists have to be paid. Arts organizations need money to survive. So I wanted to offer the congratulatory remark and the suggestion, and I leave it with you. So over to the next person.
Thank you very much, and thank you for those comments. That they mean a lot to the staff who have been working really hard on all of those items. We're really proud of them. And just before we go to Bill, who I know is waiting, I want to remind the board that we launched living rooms only a week after the closure, and that happened with a lot of work and dedication from the staff, and also with the support of all the artists of the City of Toronto, and it's become a really beautiful program, so I encourage everyone to check it out. Now over to Bill Milne. Thank you.
Hi, Bill. If you can just give us a moment here, we're not picking up any audio from your end.
Is that better? Can you hear me now?
Yes, we can hear you now. Thank you.
Good to go? Okay, thanks. I just wanted to very briefly add a comment to what the chairman was talking about in terms of transitioning into digital presentations. There's a different kind of alternate step that seems to be evolving all over the world, which is drive-in presentations. I know it's happening in Australia, it's happening in the music industry a lot, and it's happening in the film industry and has been forever. But if the city has appropriate space that can be converted quickly into a drive-in, we might be able to have a different kind of presentation that's sponsored by TO Live. It's not in our facilities, but it might still serve the audience.
Steve, couldn't agree more. Gary Crawford and I have been having a series of conversations about locations and spaces that could meet that need, and I think the city is moving in that direction. Gary, you got a comment?
No, Robert, I totally agree. Especially when we're getting into these phase 2 short, medium, long-term plans that we're working on. I think we need, from the arts and culture perspective, it's a big part of the recovery, and I think a big part of us getting back to whatever that new normal is. So that's something that I think would be great, especially on the TO Live side, to look at what we can be sponsoring or doing. And even if we can do it in the next couple of months, on anything drive through right now, depending on where we're at over the next couple of months, could be an opportunity that we should absolutely be reaching out for.
Gabe?
So I want to point out, I think it's so good that we started this digital initiative a year ago. As we move content online and in different mediums that we've never done, we're going to need things like email lists. Who do we email to bring to the events? We're going to need CRM systems to make sure that we can connect with these customers. If we had started this now, we'd be a year behind. It would take another year to put out an RFP and get the responses. So I think it's so good that we did this 12 months ago. It's probably allowed us to kick things off much quicker than before.
I don't know if my hand...
Charles. So, yeah, sorry, I was on mute and I have to get off mute. Anyway, you're up, Charles.
We're all going to be good on turntabling after this. That's not guaranteed. Yeah, I agree with the comments earlier. I've had the real wonderful opportunity of participating in a couple of digital performances. One came out of Dusseldorf, was 24-hour dance festival, and Fiona Leonard there has held 3 24-hour festivals since COVID came in. It's picked up very well, both in terms of numbers and in terms of global participation of artists. So what she did is an example, because I think part of the possibility that we might want to look at is, how do we partner with other organizations that are doing arts events right now, like the Music Gallery or whatever else, that are using digital formats, and can we use that as building our relationship by providing the kinds of support we can provide, as well as, providing the arts to the public in a much more broader way. So Fiona, what she did is she had 24 countries involved in creating work, and 50-some countries participated in viewing it. And for one event, 124 hours, over 2,000 hits, right? So, these are really important opportunities, A, not only to keep artists working, but B, to really look at collaborating across the arts, who's using digital platforms right now to put work out there, and can we partner with them in some ways?
Thank you. Okay.
So
Clyde, back to you.
Great, thank you. And thank you for all of your
Is it
thoughts from the board on that. I want to assure you that Josephine and her team have many, many great ideas around this particular topic. We have top-lined it into breaking it into 3 phases, and all of them are really exciting, and we look forward to sharing them with the board soon. A lot of them actually touch on the very topics that you're talking on. So thank you for your input. And I know what this really was a delay to getting to the finance update. So, but now, unfortunately, we do need to turn to Bill Milne. So, Bill, please, and for your update.
It's very hard to hear Clyde on my feed. So would you be able to speak up, Clyde, please? Thanks. When you're speaking. Everybody else is good.
Bill, we can't hear you. Clyde, are you there?
Yes, I'm here. I think we're just having a bit of a technical difficulty with Bill. He may have actually... Bill, can you try logging in again?
He needs a few minutes. Do you want to move on?
Why don't we move on?
on?
We'll come back to the finance update. We'll move on to Matt Farrell, who's our VP of Operations. Matt.
Hello, thank you, Clyde. Within the 4 departments within operations have been quite busy since the closure. Within the facilities department, all 3 buildings received a very, very thorough deep clean that allowed for the remaining skeleton staff that were in the buildings to continue to work there in a safe and clean manner. That department has also devoted a lot of time and efforts to seeing how we can ratchet down the machine and building use so that ultimately we can see some utility savings there. That project has been quite an extensive one, and it is ongoing. Within the food and beverage and patron services department, there's an opportunity that we're taking advantage of to implement a new inventory and updating our point of sale services. And there's also a lot of work going on in looking at how that department, especially in the food and beverage side, is going to service a post-COVID-19 environment. There's going to be some substantial changes in the way that food and beverage will get to our audience, as that department is looking at that and exploring what that world is going to look like. Within capital projects, item 10.6 of our agenda today is going to deal with those specifically. But the brief overview is that the department has seen a reduction in their funding from the city by about 60%, and there is a very, very limited amount of capital projects that will be going forward. Finally, in the overall sense of what's going on, the department is spending a lot of work, again, looking at the post-COVID-19 environment when we are able to get guests and visiting companies and audiences into our venues. It's going to be a phased approach that will match up with the phases Josephine spoke of, but the way that we got guests and our staff operated and went through the buildings is going to be very, very different. So there's a substantial amount of work to figure out how that's all going to happen. That's my update. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Matt. That's great. I also want to point out that Matt is sitting on many, many committees, He's been volunteered to sort of sit on all the international committees to look at best practices around health and safety and operations of venues so that we can get our venues back up and operating as soon as possible. This is an ongoing discussion. I know that there are groups that some are led by the City of Toronto, some are national, and we're dealing with our colleagues across the country, both in the at the National Arts Centre, Stratford, the BAM Centre, Place des Arts, everywhere to try to get those best practices set up and also to get the protocols and policies in place to recommend up to the chief medical officers of the different locations so that we can start back up again. So thank you, Matt, for all of your hard work there. I really appreciate it. I believe Bill is now ready.
Clyde,
So,
Mr.
yes?
Chair, I cannot hear Clyde. There's something wrong with your microphone feed. Everybody else is crystal clear. And I don't know if it's only me or others, but
Well, I don't have a
clerks check,
problem.
please.
Can we?
I can hear him. Can others hear Clyde?
I hear him just fine.
My feed, that's all right. I'll have to turn the up when you talk.
Well, I like it when you hear me, Counselor. That's, you know, we always like to have a good connection. So I'll try to speak really clearly so that you can also hear me. Over to Bill Milne. I think he's ready now. Thank you.
Hello, can you hear me this time? Good afternoon, everyone. Sorry about that. So in the early days of COVID-19, the administration team made sure that the infrastructure and processes were in place for IT, for HR, for payroll, for finance, for deposits and such. We're still tweaking those systems, but it seems to be working. One of the things right out of the gate was a requirement from the city for lots of city reporting. That was sharing our cash flows, our bank balances. We had to look at lost revenues and underspending. It's not only included the operating budget, but also the state of repair budget, as well as the FFRF budget in order for us to reduce spending. It actually made us look at our budgets and our data differently, but the team rose to the challenge, and now we're down to a weekly reporting to the city. So the current focus obviously is on maintaining these processes, so I can confirm that payroll is running smoothly, ROEs are being issued on a regular basis, even though the requests have slowed down. Payments are being made in all shapes and forms through both banks, the Meridian and the Scotiabank. The IT infrastructure seems to be running smoothly. They actually set up an IT help desk, so that helps with the request for services like any challenges through the internet. And there's actually a weekly update from the HR department to all staff, whether they're working or not working, including a town hall, which we had just last week or the week before, where 114 staff were in attendance. Projects that are ongoing right now for the various teams are, one of the major ones is working across all the teams, is finding ways that we can cut spending, and that's been a team effort for the entire organization. HR continues to work on the Bamboo HR database for our rollout later this year. IT continues to work on cybersecurity. In fact, we had training last week, and there's going to be another training next week. Finance is working actually on with Scotiabank and Meridian to fine-tune the payments to make it easier and to save costs. Finance is also researching a budgeting and software program as part of the digital transformation. We're doing modeling, and more modeling, as well as one thing we're really excited about was we finished the 2019 audit, and it was done completely remotely. Normally the auditors come in for 2 or 3 weeks and bug us, but this time through a portal that they had set up, we were able to do it remotely. So that's it from the administration team.
Thank you, Bill. I really appreciate it. I also want to thank Bill for all of his hard work. As the board is aware, we've had 2 rounds of reductions in staff throughout all of that work, and the constant modeling to maintain the the finances of the organization throughout this period. Both Bill and his team have done an excellent job. I know we are going to be presenting a plan post-June to the board later in this session, but I want to thank him now for all of his hard work and his partnership throughout that. Now over to Sandra Belisario and our development department.
Hi, okay. Good afternoon. I hope can you see me and hear me and everything's fine? Good afternoon. It's good to see you all. The report given to you by Clyde highlighted most of all what the development team has been working on. I just wanted to say I hope you're all subscribed to the TO Live newsletter and have received our weekly email. Through this program, we have over 100 new donors, so I'm very happy about that. Just a couple of things I wanted to add to the grant application process, that we have a number of applications that are in, a number of them, just to Robert's point, that are on virtual funding for some of the programs that we're doing for virtual programming. There's two that in particular. One is for the Canada Council to support the living rooms projects that Josephine and Jeff spoke to. And another one that's going in, we just got a deadline change 5 minutes ago, but for June 30th for Canadian Heritage. And that's going to be to support the project for that Gabe and Jeff are working on, digital transformation. In regards to corporate and individual support that we're going after, it's to support the two projects that Josephine spoke about. Most of it is the summer season of TO Live and the fall's provision of space. And just one final comment on philanthropy in general. Since March, everybody's probably aware that, you know, everybody was shut down and it was just hard to see opportunities for discussion for proposals and to give everything. But that seems to be opening up, doors seem to be opening up to us now. So I'm looking forward to, you know, getting to meet people and getting in there and putting in some of these proposals and having some luck on those anyway. Anyway, if there's any questions of the work we're doing, please reach out to Robert or Clyde and they'll get back to me. I'll answer any of those.
Let me just add, Sandra, thank you. And it's, you know, you couldn't have come at a more challenging moment, but you are reaching out and you're finding creative ways to search out supporters, financial supporters. And it's missionary work at this point, but it's very important.
Thank you, Robert.
Thank you, Sandra. And I know you've done this, so I want to draw it to everyone's attention. Sandra and her team have put together a 5-year plan and submitted it as well, and we're reviewing it now. And it really lays all the foundation to grow a proper development department in conjunction with our new foundation, so that this organization can really have longevity in a way that it's never had before. So thank you, Sandra, for all of that work. You're doing a spectacular job. And now over to one of our future projects as well, the St. Lawrence Centre Next project, to Leslie Lester and to our board member, Kevin Garland. Thank you.
Did you want me to lead off?
Yes, please.
We may have been the last committee of the board that met in person in the first week of March. And at that meeting, we got to meet the wonderful Gabriela Sicari, who is our working with Leslie, even remotely, but hand in glove on, and Gabriela is with CreateTO. So we have a wonderful partnership with that organization as we move forward. And of course, you know, we had been working on the assumption that we were going to do a very massive public participation to find out what the community thinks about this project and what they feel that the arts community needs. But of course, all the ideas about public gatherings and forums for this kind of had to pivot, and we have done that now. So there will be an extensive public participation, but it'll all be done with using technology. To that end, because that really is the key to developing the program and making sure there really is the community support for this project and what that support looks like. To that end, we have engaged Kerr Smith through a procurement process, who are leading the public consultation process, and they have developed a wonderful website, which will be called St. Lawrence Centre Next, STLC Next. As soon as we have city approval to go public with it, we will launch it. And that will be the portal for the public to both a massive survey document and also for anyone who has anything to add or anything to ask about the project. So we're very happy with the way that's going, and you will all be getting that link as soon as it's up and live and we can use it. So we do have a communication strategy ready to execute to all of our stakeholders, including governments and media relations. And we're just in the process of now bringing on additional consultants, which will be the architecture, theater, and heritage consultants. And just to be clear about that, anybody who bids on these 3 areas will not be able to participate in the project once it happens. So these will be probably slightly smaller firms, but that's an issue of conflict. So that's what we're doing. We're heading out now. RFPs are out for those pieces of work. Anyway, we're moving full speed ahead and now just really waiting for the city to give us the go ahead to go public with it. That's all for me.
It might be worthwhile, Kevin, just to give the board some sense of how long a timeline this is as a project.
Well, we are hoping that we can launch the public soon, and we're still working to taking the whole thing to the City Council in September and early end of September with what we had motion from council instructed us to do, to come forward with a plan, a budget, and a business plan. And we still think that so we're working along that timeline. Over the longer term, I think we're talking about, we want to have a project that is shovel, the infrastructure funding that we know is coming federally. And so we're working very hard to make it ready for that. And then I guess once we're there, it's probably an 8 to 2 year build, and there's probably a 2 to 3 in advance of that. So, in my mind, we're looking at 2020, have a big opening ceremony, and we'll have the theater full.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes, Steve.
First of all, any additional help any of us can contribute to that process, I'm sure we're all happy to do. The chairman asked about timeline. I'm also concerned, Kevin, I don't know what your thinking is about this or whether there's been a change in strategy or a new strategy about the obtainability of government funding from all 3 levels of government. This crisis has run roughshod over everybody's budgets. I know there's going to be infrastructure spending, but that's going to go to a lot of hungry mouths. How do we feel about our chances of being in the proper place in line?
I'm actually feeling pretty good. We think that the city itself and the mayor are firmly behind it. We see being the piece that will have arts in a new way. So it's a whole rethinking of what a theater can be in a new age for the arts. And I think that's the way we're hoping to position. There's a big consultation process to hear what the council thinks. But I'm that they are going to need to invest. The city cannot let the sit the way it is without spending a staggering amount of money. So there's capital there already. And then the question is, can we get the federal government and the provincial to be part of it? We're relatively optimistic.
Good. And one last point, it seems like a perfect opportunity to design a new facility with digital presentation in mind from the very get-go.
You're 50% right. Exactly.
Great.
Gabe, I saw your hand up, I thought.
Me too, Robert.
Who's the me? Oh, Gary. Okay, good.
No, I'm good. I was just scratching my nose, but would like to comment that I think Clyde's hair looks phenomenal. I don't know how you're keeping up without barber shops being closed. I'm in awe of this. And also, Matt's extremely bright pink couch, I really like as well. So, no, we're in public here, but keeping it light. Thanks, guys.
All right, Gary.
Yeah, thanks, Rob. No, I thought it'd be a good opportunity to kind of bring into context of what the city's been doing right now with regard to arts and culture across the city. And I'll give a context of what we've been working on, and it also leads into, I think, the report that Kevin brought forward with regard to the St. Lawrence Center. So I just want to give a quick recap of what's been happening over the last couple of months. I don't know if everybody knows. I think a lot of people online would know that the mayor put together a task force on economic support and recovery probably about 6-7 weeks ago. He's asked me to lead the arts and culture component of that. And I have been reaching out through my committee to dozens, if not hundreds, of arts and culture partners across the city, large and small, a number of roundtables. I'm just finalizing with Pat Tobin through Economic Development and Culture. It's just finalizing a report. It's going to be called Rebuilding Toronto's Creative Future. And that's really a report of, number one, what we've heard, and recommendation that'll be moving forward to another office that has been set up through City Council, can be led by Saad Rafi. And if you know Saad, he was the person who, the last person who brought the Pan Am Games to fruition. So he has set up, or the city manager has set up, what's called the Toronto Office of Recovery and Rebuild. Now, what that is, it's important as we're looking at sort of the difference, because arts and culture being an important part of that. We have our other partners, whether it's affordable housing, labor, a whole variety of consultations taking place across the city, led by a number of city councillors. I know some of my colleagues online are already aware of that. This will be feeding into a larger process of a recovery plan that the city is working on. And as I said, arts and culture is a big part of that. I just want to give you a sense of the kind of the conversations that we have been having, what I have been hearing from the arts and culture. TO Live, of course, a number of people on this on the board have been involved in that. But there's 4 key areas, and I'll loop back to the importance of the St. Lawrence Center project and how that fits into that. First component is supporting the culture sector, the business continuity and key institutions. The other second part, and Gabe would appreciate this as others, is the importance of digital infrastructure and adaptation. And we heard that a lot from the opportunity of it, the huge opportunity. Third component is maintain and advance a generation worth of equity gains that we have been having, and to be able to support vulnerable workers. That'll be a big part of this report. And the third part is leveraging culture and to build strong neighborhoods in a multi-centered city. So those are the 4 areas that we're focusing on. I mean, the conversations that we were having, and I think we got that through a lot of the presentations, talking about liquidity, equity, digital, public confidence, and recovery. When we're looking at starting to recovery, when will people have the sense and public confidence to actually go out to shows, to actually go out to restaurants? So that's a big part of that, and the programming aspect of that. We're looking at the larger Toronto Office of Recovery and Rebuild. 3 areas. You're hearing it already. This is phase 1, phase 2, phase 3 from the province. We're looking at this: recover, rebuild, and reimagine. The St. Lawrence Center project fits in quite well. Number 1 on the digital component. When we're looking at reimagining what this new center will be going into the 21st century, especially on digital. But it also looks into the reimagine component of the opportunity to look at not only rebuilding the city, but reimagining what the city can look like on the arts and culture component. So it fits in quite well with these recommendations. As I said, once the report comes out, it will be talking about the role of the St. Lawrence Center redevelopment, and more specifically when we're looking at infrastructure money coming out. There is an opportunity. You're seeing that the federal government right now supporting arts and culture. There's a $500 million fund that came out a number of weeks ago, and there will be more. So I think the St. Lawrence Center redevelopment project well positioned to be able to look at that opportunity more so than it may have been prior to what was happening, because at the end of the day, this project doesn't move forward without the 3 levels of government supporting that. So I'm looking at this as an opportunity. I think as we move forward and positioning the St. Lawrence Center redevelopment as part of an ask, as part of the priorities and what the city is looking for. I know the city manager is aware of that, as is the mayor. So as we move forward, and somebody commented that there'll be a lot of people looking for support, but I'm confident that the St. Lawrence Center redevelopment project will be part of that conversation. So I just want to give that an update on where we're at and where the city's at. So on that, thanks, Robert.
Thank you, Gary. Much appreciated. And your constant support, not just for us, but for the whole city's arts and culture section, has been and it continues to be extremely important to all of us. So big thank you. Shout out to you. Clyde, back to you.
Great. So thank you very much. And I echo everything you just said about the support from the city, from Councillor Crawford, and of course from the budget office for TO Live. In summary, I'm sure everyone can now see that we are working very, very hard and focused on the future, on the projects that we can keep going. As a reminder, we're down to about 10% of our normal staff complement. And so the work that people are doing isn't meant to be, and our enthusiasm for the future and our hope is in the face of the crisis that we're currently facing. And it's due very much in large part to the quality of the people around the table. And so I just want to thank the team that we have. We have assembled an amazing group of senior leadership here at TO Live, and it's because of that that we will come through this and come out the other end of the crisis in great strength, and I have great faith in that as well. So that's our summary for the CEO update, and now I'm going to throw it back to our chair. Thank you.
There we go, unmuted again. Hang on. Are there any questions, further questions or comments from the board on the CEO's report? Seeing none, can the clerk's staff please display the staff recommendation on the screen? Thank you. Julie, do I have to read this?
You don't have to read it, Mr. Chair. We can just leave it on the screen and then you can take the vote.
Thank you very much. Appreciate that. May I ask then, Julie, I'll move it so we can get on with it. All those in favor of accepting the, oops, it's gone off the screen. Come back up.
Mr. Chair, we've taken it off the screen just so you can see the members voting. So we'll put the recommendations on the screen for a few seconds, and then we will take it down.
All right. All those in favor? Good. Contrary minded? Approved. Thank you very much. Our next item is CT 10.5 2020 State of Good Repair and Facility Fee Reserve Fund. This item was originally considered by the Audit Committee. The staff have submitted a supplementary report with an update list of projects. I will ask TO Live staff to give a brief overview of the report. Mr. President.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. To handle this item, I'm going to ask Matt Farrell, our VP of Operations, to give a summary of the report before you for the supplementary. Thank you.
Thank you, Clyde. When this report was originally considered by the Audit Committee, we were obviously in a very different place. At the time, there was approximately $22.3 million in capital projects, including 2019 carry forwards, which were being recommended to proceed. Since that time, the city has asked us to reconsider the projects that had been previously approved at City Council, with the idea of figuring out which projects we could defer so that those funds would be available to the city. We went through that exercise and we were able to come up with approximately $14 million in projects which we could defer. The remaining projects were projects that were either had previously had some sort of commitment to them, either had been started, or projects which had a legislative requirement, which we had to do. There was a project related to the St. Lawrence Center redevelopment. And then finally, just looking at projects where we could proceed with the design only by engaging an architect, but not carry forward with construction. So those were the four buckets in which we looked at for projects which we would not defer, and everything else we will defer until a later date.
Great. Thank you, Matt. So just to summarize, these are all projects. The projects that were remaining for 2020 were projects that were already committed to and that could not be backed out of without there being a substantial penalty. And over to the chair.
So are there any questions of Matt or Clyde on this? No? All right. No further comments then. I will now ask the clerk to display a motion with the recommendations for the supplementary report on this item, which is now posted. You all have the opportunity to read that. I will move that. May I call for the vote if there is no discussion? All those in favor? Contrary minded? Approved. I will now ask the clerk to display a motion to go into closed session, which I will read out loud. That the Board of Directors of TO Live recess its public meeting to meet in closed session to consider the following items: CT 10.4, staffing update from the President and Chief Executive Officer TO Live as it pertains to personal matters about an identifiable person in labor relations or employee negotiations. CT 10.3, collective bargaining agreement with the IATSE Local 58 at Meridian Hall. CT 10.6, updated negotiations with the IATSE Local 58 at the St. Lawrence Center for the Arts. CT 10.7, update negotiations with that IATSE Local 822 at the St. Lawrence Center for the Arts as they relate to labor relations or employee negotiations. And CT 10.8, Chair's update on COVID-19 and TO Live as it pertains to security of the property of the board and relates to personal information about identifiable individuals. All those in favor of recessing? And contrary minded? Approved. Okay. Julie? I will now ask the clerk to close the meeting to members of the public and to only provide access to members and appropriate staff for the closed session portion of this meeting. In addition, the live stream will be suspended until the closed session is over. Members and staff, I would also remind you to arrange your surroundings so the other person observes any part of the closed session debate. We will now wait for the clerk to advise that the meeting has been closed.
Mr. Chair, just give us a few moments here and I will let you know when we are properly in closed session.
You'll be happy to know I found a 10-hour version of the Jeopardy theme song on YouTube.
10 hours.
Oh my God. Anyways, someone was bored.
If you haven't yet watched Stratford's The Tempest, starring Martha Henry as Prospero, I urge you to do so. It's amazing how credible it is for a woman to play that role. I think it's actually better than a male role.
Okay, we are now in public session. Just to let you know, the broadcast is back on, Mr. Chair.
Sorry, Kevin.
And also suggest the National Theatre's Streetcar Named Desire with Gillian Anderson. We watched it last night. It's unbelievable. But we saw Martha Henry live, and she was extraordinary.
Yeah, great. CT 10.3, collective bargaining agreement with IATSE. Sorry, we are now back in open session and will consider publicly each of the items considered in closed session. CT 10.3, collective bargaining agreement with IATSE Local 58 at Meridian Hall. Are there any public questions of staff or speakers to this item? None. Can the clerk staff please display the staff recommendation on the screen? Thank you. Kevin, you'd be kind enough to move that.
Also move.
Thank you. Move to a vote. All those in favor? Contrary minded? Approved. Thank you. CT 10.4, staff update from the President, Chief Executive Officer, TO Live. Are there any public questions of staff or speakers to this item? Can the clerk staff please display the staff recommendation on the screen? Gary, would you be kind enough to move?
I'll move that.
Thank you. Any discussion? All those in favor? Contrary? Approved. CT 10.6, update on negotiations with IATSE Local 58 at the St. Lawrence Center for the Arts. Are there any public questions of staff or speakers to this item? Can the clerk staff please display the staff recommendation on the screen? Kevin, would you be kind enough to move that? Thank you. Questions? All those in favor, so you're raising your hand. Contrary? Approved. CT 10.7, update negotiations with IATSE Local 822 at the St. Lawrence Center for the Arts. Are there any public questions of staff or speakers to this item? Seeing none, can the clerk staff please display the staff recommendation on the screen? Kevin, would you do this again, please? Thank you. All those in favor? Contrary minded? Approved. CT 10.8, Chair's update on COVID-19 and TO Live. May I have a motion to receive this item for information? Can the clerk please display it on the screen? Thank you. So move. All those in favor? Contrary minded? Approved. That concludes our business for today. The meeting is adjourned. Thank you so much, everybody. I think it went very well.
It went very well.
Thanks for sharing, Robert.
Thank you. Bye now.
Buddy, great job.
Everyone.
Take care, everyone.
Thanks, Julie, and the IT team there for putting this on.